for it to start. There we go. We are live. Welcome to the NBA Outlet. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. How you doing, Kory?
I'm doing good. Excited to get our All-NBA teams out there. This is an important podcast for the award season.
Award season, all NBA teams. Before we get started, though, quick reminder, check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and YouTube. But, Kory, we're going to get right into it. You know, I think the first team we might agree on, I'm going to give you mine real quick. Steph Curry, James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, and Joel Embiid.
I got the same exact five for my All-NBA first team. I don't think any one of these guys, you can even debate them. I mean, I guess you could maybe say Embiid and Jokic.
There you go.
Maybe they could be a flip because obviously Jokic and the Nuggets have had such a tremendous season. But I think Joel Embiid has been just more dominant at the center position. But like you said, we both got the same first team.
Yeah, I think the thing for Jokic and the Embiid argument would be, you know, Embiid's more impactful defensively. And I think maybe there's a slight argument for Paul George over Kevin Durant. If someone wanted to make it, I wouldn't hate them. But I think Durant, the way he's played consistently through the year, I think his assist numbers are really up this year, which is impressive. I think first team is pretty much a lock in most people's eyes.
Yeah, I agree. And then Curry, I think someone could make a case because he's missed some games, but there's no one better at certain points in this season than Curry has been.
Yeah, there's no guard who'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm taking him over Steph. Like, stop lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Now, second team, I think it could get a little bit more interesting. I got Dame Lillard, Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Nikola Jokic.
All right, so we have the same exact five for our second teams too, because I have Irving, Lillard, Paul George, and Kawhi, and Jokic as well. I think for the forwards, like PG and Kawhi, they were borderline first team. And, you know, Kawhi kind of missing some games and being sat out. And then Paul George, obviously having that shoulder injury, kind of took a step back. So I think if we had this discussion like a month and a half ago, Paul George might be like a lock to be first team when he was on that shooting tear. But the shoulder injury kind of set him back. And then Lillard and Irving, those guys have been kind of linked all season in like the who's better debate. So it only seems right that they're both on the second team.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's not really much to change here. You know, maybe you could make an argument to get Blake Griffin over Kawhi, but Kawhi's been so good. The only thing against him is just missing games. So sadly, there's not much argument or debate right now. I think maybe the third team could change that up. So I have Russell Westbrook locked in. I have LeBron James locked in. I have Blake Griffin and Rudy Gobert. Now, the second guard spot for me is still up for grabs. It's between Kemba Walker and Ben Simmons.
Okay. So I have Westbrook locked in, Blake Griffin locked in, and Rudy Gobert locked in. My second guard spot and my second forward spot for me are not. For the guard spot, I have it between Kemba and Bradley Beal. And then for my forward spot, I'm kind of torn between LaMarcus Aldridge and LeBron James.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to put LeBron just because, like, yeah, he's had quote unquote a bad season, but like if you peek at his production, it's still crazy. And when the Lakers were actually playing well and people were healthy, they were going to make the postseason. So I think it's just too hard to take arguably the best player in the league or top three player, whatever you want to call him, off the All NBA team in general.
Yeah, that's been like the internal struggle I've had, and like also. And I know this doesn't really matter when it comes to all NBA teams. We've seen guys make one of these teams despite missing, 15 plus games, because he's going to miss right around 20 games on the year. Maybe even, I think 22, depending on, I'm not sure how many games he rested before they officially sat him, but it's going to be right around 20. So that's kind of like what in my mind is kind of taking him a step back. Like, cause I think like just the fact that the Spurs have done what they've done, especially the last month, LaMarcus Aldridge has been, I mean, his numbers are really good. I mean, 9 rebounds a game. I think 18 points sounds too little. He might be in the 20s, 22, I think. Plus shooting 54% from the field. I don't know. I kind of want to give Aldridge the nod. But like you said, I mean, you look at LeBron's numbers, he's still averaging 28, 9, and 8, or whatever the case may be, still shooting a good split from the field. The free throws are different. We'll ignore that part of his game. He isn't having a basketball court built for Space Jam, so hopefully in between sets, he's just shooting free throws all day. But that's been like my forward debate. And then I'll let you debate your guard before I get into that.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on it, I just think it's hard to have somebody like LeBron, like that's saying, let's hypothetically, even with the season LeBron's had, if we put him on the Spurs, like, are they not better? You know what I mean? Like
right.
They're going to be better even with we match the exact caliber and the exact amount of games. I think the Spurs are still better with LeBron than Aldridge. So I think I'm still leaning towards LeBron there. Now, I could see the argument for Bradley Beal as well. I think the one thing I didn't really think about Ben Simmons a ton, but then I thought about it and I was like, no, we're giving Russell Westbrook, second or what? We're giving him third team, and he's pretty much doing something similar than Ben Simmons. Simmons doesn't necessarily have the triple-double average, but he's right there. I think it's like 17, 9, and 8, over 50% from the field, 56% from the field. Obviously doesn't shoot threes, but Westbrook shouldn't shoot threes, and he's shooting like 27% from there. So I think Simmons actually, and the fact that he's really good defensively, might give him the nod, and he's on a winning team. If you want to give it to Kemba or Bradley Beal, I think that's okay. But I actually think Ben Simmons might get my nod.
Yeah, I didn't actually put much thought into anyone. Like, when I was thinking about the third team, I thought about Jimmy Butler. I thought about Tobias Harris. I actually didn't think about Ben Simmons, which is kind of disrespectful.
And he's probably been their most consistent player throughout the year because Joel Embiid being in and out of the lineup with injuries. Simmons hasn't really missed much time. Jimmy Butler's been in and out, and Tobias Harris being the late add at the deadline.
Right, and we not us personally. I know that we're actually pretty good about not getting on him about the jump shot. But his inability to shoot doesn't really impact his game incredibly. Obviously, there are certain aspects of his game which are limited without a jump shot, but he still gets the rebounds, as you mentioned. He still gets the assists. He still runs the offense. There's not many more guys you'd rather have in the open court than Ben Simmons. Defensively, because of how big he is and the fact he can guard a couple different positions, he's a little bit more versatile. I think you make a good point. Kemba and Beal being on like bad teams. Like, I know Bradley Beal just set a Washington Wizards record for having 2,000 points, 400 assists, and 400 rebounds in the same season. But like, what do those numbers mean when you're relied on so heavily? And then like Kemba obviously had that hot start, but then like, the Hornets never really did anything with that hot start. He's kind of come back down to earth, at least shooting split wise. So Ben Simmons has a really good case for this.
Yeah, it's the thing I think is when you look at it is like, all right, Ben Simmons definitely has the best teammates. Kemba's probably asked to do the most, and Bradley Beal, I think, could get thrown in there. But the fact is, like, his team's been so bad, and I don't want to say his stats are empty, but to some extent they are.
Yeah, that's how I feel at this current moment with Ben Simmons now being thrown around in my head. I think
if you're looking all around, that's what I think would really help Ben Simmons' case, is the fact that he's like the most all-around player in terms of offense and defense. And you mentioned he is a complete monster in transition.
Yeah. I mean, I know the comparison's always there. It's like a young LeBron James. When you see somebody who's 6'10", he's got to be 260 coming at you. You want to get the hell out of the way because that's a freight train moving.
Yeah. So I mean, those three guys. I think if I had a gun to my head right now, I'd go with Simmons just because of the record. If Kemba's some magical way able to squeeze the Hornets in the playoffs, he might get the nod.
He also really hasn't been that good during this like playoff stretch where they're trying to make the playoff push. I mean, he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been like a dominant force. They've just been lucky and had some of the guys on the role players on the team kind of step up. And I mean, Jeremy Lamb has probably been one of the most impactful players down this stretch.
Yeah, he did have that one. His numbers are kind of hot and cold. He has the big games, and he has the bad games. He did have that 47-point game against Utah, which they still lost. So it's like Kemba's just a little bit different because of his roster and what's going on there. It's tough to say. And obviously, I think it impacts him the most because of contract-wise and getting that, max money if he were to get the All-NBA slot.
I think right now I'm going to lock in LeBron for third team. I'll make that decision right now because I think you're right. At the end of the day, LeBron James is still an All-NBA player. I wouldn't be against him not being on it. Like, I can understand if someone agrees with me, but I think realistically, you look at the numbers, you look at where they were prior to the injury. He's still an All-NBA player, and I'm going to take Bradley Beal out. Now I'm kind of torn between Kemba and Ben Simmons because like Kemba really did have probably like 3/4 of the year was incredible,
but his team's not great. Let's be honest. Like the difference between the Wizards and the Hornets in terms of overall roster talent isn't that great.
I mean, you just said it. He had 47 points in a game that they lost. And he's had numerous games like that this year where he's had 35+ points and the team still can't get the W. I think I'm leaning with Kemba. I think I would give Kemba the nod.
It's close.
Yeah, I'm locking Kemba in for my third team.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like, I could easily go the other way. I don't know. I think I'm just going with Ben Simmons for the defense maybe, but Kemba could change my mind in the matter of the next few games.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is a good pick because also, like you mentioned, the Sixers have just been – they're a good team, first off, and he's been the most durable player alongside Embiid.
Yeah, true. And he's just been doing his thing, and it was without the 3-point shot, which some might look at a negative, some might look at it a positive.
Yeah.
Eventually, at some point, he's going to add it.
Now, we had one difference.
What do you think? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the Rookie of the Year race. I mean, I still have Luka pretty much locked in. Do you think Trae Young has a chance at winning it, or it's pretty much wrapped up?
If the Hawks play like spoiler for like the Pistons or some of these teams late in the stretch where they have another game or two against, then maybe. That win against the Bucks in overtime was nice. The performance the other night against the Sixers was nice. So, like, he's been playing really good basketball against some good squads. And also that's a credit to the fact that the Hawks are just one of those good, bad teams. But I think Luka's just too far ahead. I think the fact that, like, the first 3 months, Luka kind of dominated the race, and then Trae Young really turned it up right around the All-Star break. I just think Luka's been doing it all season. Trae's just a little bit more flashy, I think, which is why it sticks out more.
Yeah, he has the flashiness, and then I think recency bias. The fact that Luka hasn't really done a ton, has been sitting out a little bit with injury. Trae's really picked it up, and I think the thing that hurts Trae is his beginning of the season was bad. He was shooting 35% from the field and under 30 from three. Like, I think if you dig into the numbers, it's definitely Luka. Trae's done a great job of getting back into the race, but I think if you look at the Mavs, if they keep the roster they had, they might be competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and not to mention, I know triple doubles is like such a weird thing to bring up, but like Luka has the most triple doubles in NBA history as a rookie with 8, and that's still pretty incredible because it's not like he had a ton of talent in Dallas most of the year.
Yeah.
So I think that also helps his case.
Talking about that, what do you think of Westbrook's 2020 game? That was wild.
Shout out to Nipsey, rest in peace. That's. I mean, I don't think I saw this tweet, and actually, I felt it. Somebody said like we've never really seen that kind of like that kind of sporting performance and like to show respect to somebody else. Like 2020 to do 60s, which was something I don't know the exact relation to it had with Nipsey, but 60, he was like a part of the rolling 60 or the 60. I don't know, something like that. But the fact that Westbrook went out there to try and honor Nipsey in that fashion and was able to do like that kind of performance, which is we haven't seen since Wilt Chamberlain, who was a center and then a point guard did it. And obviously I saw someone say like, well, Westbrook stat padded for the last 2 rebounds. Bro, he still had 21 rebounds. Like, just let it go. Fantastic, though. I thought it was one of the best performances I've seen.
Yeah, and I think if you want to complain about the rebounds, that's fine. Like, Steven Adams definitely helps him get the boards. But if you're getting 20 assists, if you had freaking 5 points, 5 rebounds, and 20 assists, that's an amazing night. Like, 20 assists is really hard to do.
Yeah, it's only been done. It hasn't been done that often. There's no way it's been done that. I know he's done it before, too.
It's a rare thing, and I mean, you give him a lot of credit for doing that. Obviously, his numbers haven't been amazing this year in terms of efficiency, but he still just made our 3rd NBA All-Team, so
yeah,
still deserves some love for the way he's doing. Obviously, OKC hasn't been amazing, but Kory, we did get some news today, and I want to know what you think, how it impacts the playoff race. Josh Richardson is most likely out the rest of the season for the Miami Heat. Do you think they can still get into the playoffs, or this kind of knocks them out?
It's definitely a blow. I'm sure Dion Waiters is happy because Dion Waiters is going to see a boost in minutes. I mean, it definitely hurts.
Be a pro or a con for the Heat.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on what Dion Waiters you're getting, right? I mean, you're probably going to see a little bit more Dwayne Wade, so that could be a little bit fun too for Miami Heat fans. But realistically, now I don't want to see them in the playoffs, though. Because that's their best player. And I get it. Even if they made it to be the 8th seed, they're going to get swept in the first round. But now, like, they're really going to get swept in the first round without Josh Richardson. I mean, that's been their best player all year. Probably their best defender as well. His versatility is fantastic for that team. So I think it's a huge blow. And for me personally, I don't want them to make the playoffs next. I'd rather see a team that's more talented like Orlando with more young guys.
So we do have a couple comments in here from this guy named Jack Manuel.
Oh, here we go.
He said, "Hey, Kory, you bum. Where's the AirPods
at?" Wait, there's. I left them in the car. They're here. They're nearby. Don't worry.
And he said, "Do you guys think that it'll come down to the last game against Brooklyn for Miami?"
The loss last night to Toronto was a blow for you guys.
I'm just kidding.
Miami losing too, though, helped. Miami, normally you don't see a team lose back-to-backs like they did against the Celtics.
The Pistons did too. It actually like really is a rare thing to see. The Pistons lost back-to-back against the Pacers, and then the Heat lost back-to-back against the Celtics.
Right, both helping the Nets, of course. I mean, I think it is going to matter just because it doesn't seem like any of these teams want to lock in a playoff spot right now. It just feels like every team is just in that, like we mentioned on the last episode of the NBA Outlet. These are some tough schedules these guys have to end the year, and everybody seems to be a little bit banged up. Blake Griffin, obviously, for the Pistons has been out. Now Josh Richardson for Miami. The Nets seem to be the healthiest, but they just have the toughest schedule. So it kind of like all balances itself out. But yeah, it looks like that final game against Miami is going to be huge.
Yeah, Alan Crabb just announced out for the rest of the season for the Nets. He's missed a lot of time over the last month anyways, but I think it is going to probably come down to that. Like we talked about the Nets, they have Milwaukee, Indiana, and Miami to finish off the season. Miami has Minnesota, Toronto, Philadelphia, and the Nets. I think the one positive the Nets have in this situation is Dwayne Wade's last game in Miami is that Tuesday before the Wednesday matchup against the Nets. So it's an emotional game. Obviously, a lot of crying, a lot of feelings in that. So maybe the Nets can catch them a little bit gassed out in that home game in Brooklyn.
That would be the ideal situation. And looking at the Nets matchup against the Pacers, it sounded like today, it wasn't confirmed. Darren Collison, when he talks to the media, his groin injury is they're being really cautious with it because they want him to be healthy for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think he's going to play tomorrow, first off, against Boston.
And that would lock Boston pretty much into the home court.
Correct. Right? And then if Boston locks up home court tomorrow, then I don't think the Pacers are worried about getting Collison back. Wesley Matthews has been banged up. So then maybe the Nets catch the Pacers starting to rest guys to get healthy for that first round matchup against the Celtics.
Who else do you think they would rest hypothetically? Do you think they'd rest anybody other than Collison and Matthews? Do you think Bogdanovich or Turner or Sabonis?
Collison for sure, Matthews for sure, who's I think he has a hamstring injury. And I wouldn't be shocked if they just wanted to give Miles Turner and maybe even Thad Young like just a game or two, just a game or two of rest. But then again, like, you know, it's hard to get the gauge because like the Pacers are one of those teams where like I just don't feel like they ever want to take a night off, like player wise. So like McMillan would have to say like, listen, like we're gonna rest you. But again, like if they're not playing for anything, then it would make to me the most sense to let these guys just sit out maybe the last two games to go fully healthy. Because if you want to beat Boston in that first round series, everyone's got to be 100% healthy. So you might see almost, you know, like TJ Leaf might get a ton of minutes in that Nets game. Aaron Holiday, I wouldn't be surprised would get a ton of minutes in that last game. So you might see some of the young rookies just kind of finish out the year those last two games.
Yeah, and another great point from one of our listeners right now, not even going to try to pronounce her name, I apologize. If Milwaukee wins tonight, they clinch the 1 seed, so they could rest starters against the Nets too. So the Nets could be going to a situation where they face Milwaukee, who might be resting. They might face the Pacers, who could be resting. So they could easily almost potentially lock up a playoff spot before that matchup against Miami because their magic number is 3.
Yeah, and also to be noted, Bogdanovich hasn't been playing poor necessarily, but his shooting numbers the last couple of games have been off. He just kind of lost his rhythm. So maybe Nate McMillan take a chance to give him some rest just to get his shot right and to let him like take a night off because they've relied heavily on him the last month, and it hasn't translated into wins, of course.
Yeah, and Jack's got another question for us. Outside of the Nets, who would you prefer to see in the postseason, Detroit, Orlando, or Miami? You know, obviously 2 out of the 3.
To who? Oh, like just in the general scheme of things?
Yeah, like who would you prefer to watch?
Orlando right now. I think for me, it's Orlando. The fact that they got all the young guys, Jonathan Isaac, Aaron Gordon. I mean, DJ Augustin's had a career year. Terrence Ross has been a very good spark plug. You know, and for Vucevic, who's going to be a free agent this offseason, it could maybe, you know, turn a team of 2 into like being highly interested in him if he has a successful playoff run. So I would like to see Orlando. They're playing some of the best basketball right now of any of these bottom tier teams. Obviously, they're kind of favored in the schedule. But I'm actually intrigued when they beat the Pacers last Saturday, I believe it was. Yeah, Saturday. I was kind of caught off guard. I mean, they just looked really good. The best I've seen them.
They were the Pacers were up at 10, I want to say, in the second half because I remember we were like messaging or something. And I was like, yo, I need the Pacers to get that W for the Nets. And it didn't end up happening. But and I want to say one thing interesting about Orlando, out of all the bottom, seeded teams, they could match up with some of these upper echelon teams a little bit better with the length they have in terms of Isaac, Gordon, and Vucevic. They have some guys and they have some length, they have some versatility, and they kind of play a game where, hey, you can beat us, but we're going to make you earn that W.
Yeah. And I mean, Evan Fournier too, he's been extremely solid for them down the stretch. And it feels like, with a new coach coming in, I always think there's like a learning curve. And I think because these guys were so young, it kind of took this team a little bit to figure things out. But I think Steve Clifford has done a tremendous job with this Orlando team. And I agree. I think if you get them in the right series where they can actually get out and run with a team, like not that they want to face Milwaukee, but I actually think Orlando somewhat matches up good in the sense. Like Vucevic is a mixed match for the Bucks. And then, athletic ability wise and length, they kind of match up with the Bucks somewhat well. Obviously, there's no one who's going to limit Antetokounmpo. He's going to get his, but I kind of like that matchup.
Yeah, Isaac might have a similar wingspan, but not the body weight to match it. I've just really wanted to get this thought out about Evan Fournier. I feel like Evan Fournier gets the most calls for a non-star player in the league. Like, he consistently gets the free throw line on calls that are like 50-50. And I just always felt that it's like so rare to see for a guy that's not ever been a star to keep getting calls. And I don't think like he gets calls that he shouldn't, but a lot of 50-50 calls I feel like go his way.
I haven't really paid much attention to that, but I'm gonna have to watch that more closely when I watch them. Maybe it's never mind. That's me. I'm not gonna. I was gonna say maybe it's because he's lost his hair so quickly. That
I knew you were gonna say a hair joke. It looks terrible. It's looked terrible since he's been in the league. But Trae Young's trying to beat him in that category. But what would be the second team? I think Orlando would be fun to watch too. Would you prefer Detroit or Miami?
If Blake Griffin's not going to be healthy, then Miami, just for the fact I'd rather see Dwayne Wade. But if Blake Griffin's going to be out there, I'd rather see the Pistons, especially because, I mean, I don't know what Wayne Ellington's going to get paid this summer, it looks like, because he's just been an absolute stud for them. He had another 25-plus point outing last night against the Pacers.
So crazy to even say that out loud.
Yeah. And I think he had 25 points in both those games against the Pacers. He just was he was hard for us to guard for whatever reason. But I think I would rather have the Pistons if they're healthy. Otherwise, I'd rather see Wade as long as I can.
Yeah. I mean, if Blake's healthy, that's a fun tandem, him and Drummond, and then some of the other guys could step up. It'll be interesting to see with Wayne Ellington. He didn't get paid last year, but a lot of players didn't. This offseason, he's a shooter. He can fit in a lot of different teams. He should get a contract, and I'm sure he's probably looking to stay somewhere for more than one season because he's bounced around a lot.
Yeah, and I would expect a lot of contending teams looking for shooting to go after him. Maybe not in a huge – he might not get a lot of money, but a team like Utah, a team like the Lakers, there's teams that are looking for that kind of spark plug shooter off the bench. I think he's starting with Detroit right now, but realistically, I think he's more of a 6th, 7th man off the bench.
Yeah, for sure. He provides that shooting, obviously starting to get up there in age too. Kory, any other topics you want to cover before we get out of here? We saw it posted in our OTG group chat. Did ESPN just forget about D'Lo, or was that a snub? I think they adjusted it because I was looking at their awards later on, and D'Lo was number 2.
Okay.
So I think unless that was just like I don't know if that was the same one that I read. The one I read, he was number 2. That might have been just pure like statistics. So maybe that's why he didn't get the jump, but I'm not sure.
Okay. That was the only thing. I figured to everyone listening, there was a most improved player list, and they had everybody except for D'Lo and Spencer Dinwiddie on it.
And they didn't have Winslow on it either.
Right. They have Winslow on it either, which obviously is wrong because I think the most improved player of the year award race is a 2-man race between Siakam and D'Lo at this point in time.
And we could chat about that a little bit because I do think there's been some interesting arguments brought up. Like last year, the race was a lot of Victor Oladipo obviously won it. Then you had Clint Capella and Spencer Dinwiddie. And someone could argue that, hey, Spencer Dinwiddie made the biggest jump in terms of like his production because he went from being a player that didn't even really play, was kind of out of the NBA, into being an above average starter, but Oladipo made the jump from being a starter to a star. And I think it's almost a similar argument this year. Obviously, Siakam's probably better than Dinwiddie was last year, but he went from being, a bench player to a starter, where D'Angelo Russell went from being kind of a borderline starter because I don't think there was any lock-in. There wasn't a ton of confidence into being a star, a franchise player, and somebody that runs the show for your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to, I want to say impact, D'Lo has been more impactful, I think, because the Nets don't win it nearly as many games if they don't have D'Lo, where I think as the Raptors, they may not win as many games, but they're still a top playoff team in the East without Siakam, which I think is just a difference in value. I know I saw someone make, and this is the wrong way to discredit Siakam, but someone said like, oh, well, if he's just getting minutes now. That's the only reason why. Yeah. And it was like, dude, that's like such a weak argument that you can say that for so many guys in the league. I think it's more so just what you value more. Cause I think like, I know some people have made a case for Paul George because Paul George has raised his shooting numbers and obviously he's been kind of a more dominant force. But I think when you're coming to impact and a team success, I haven't made my lock-in for this award yet. But I've been more so leaning towards D'Lo in the recent weeks simply because I just don't think the Nets are where they are without D'Lo, and I think the Raptors are probably maybe one seed lower if they don't have Siakam.
Yeah, I think one thing that really helped D'Angelo when this was like his major star moment of the season was that comeback they had against Sacramento, down 25 to start the fourth, 27. The Kings did everything they possibly could to try to stop him, and they still lost the game because he was playing so well. And I would think I'd make the argument making a jump from being a starter to an all-star/star is harder than making the jump from being a bench player to, I guess you could call him a borderline all-star, but I would love to see him in a different situation. He's obviously improved his game a ton, but it is a lot easier when you have other great players on your team because you're just not getting as much attention. And, you know, some people play, well, he'll do it without him. He did in games without him. Yeah, he got the confidence, but like, hey, I'm playing the Raptors. I saw perfect examples last night against the Nets is he had mismatches in the post. They couldn't double team because they have other great players around him. Like, right. You're not going to come off Kawhi. You're not going to come off Kyle Lowry. Even somebody like Marcus Gasol is still keeping you at the three-point line, and Danny Green's been great this year. So it's like, if you put Siakam on the Nets, do I feel like they're going to be in the playoff race? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and I also, you know, this, you can make this what you will of it. I think a coach is going to plan a lot harder for D'Lo than they're going to plan for Siakam defensively.
Yeah. And I think another argument, and obviously I'm biased. I'm a Nets fan. I run the Brooklyn Buzz with my guy Jack Manuel and regular guest on the show, Will Jackson. D'Lo does a great job making his teammates better, and I see a lot of people talking about his game, and they still do not appreciate his passing. His passing is extremely good. Like, it's not like he's a very good passer. Like, he's close to being an elite level passer. Obviously, still has the sloppy ones he throws in there, but his vision is as good as it gets in the league.
He's had some fantastic dimes this year. You're always very good at keeping me in the loop on those because you've seen the post every single very nasty dime that he's had. But yeah, I think you're right. The D'Lo has been slept on in a lot of ways this season still. And it's a credit to the fact, it's a discredit to the fact that the Nets just haven't in general gotten a lot of media attention. Obviously, when they had that nice stretch and they had that huge comeback win against the Kings, they kind of blimp up on the radar. But, you know, for the casual fan, unless you're in New York, you're just not getting a lot of Brooklyn.
Yeah, and I think the narrative with D'Angelo Russell as well, like some people still bring up the thing with Nick Young and the Lakers nonsense where like, hey, that really doesn't matter anymore, and that's not an impact on the player he is at right now.
It's funny. I had this discussion, and I think it might have been with Nigel last night on Full Access Hoops, which will be out on Friday. But he said like the locker room, it was about D'Lo saying like, because I was like, you know, the Lakers, they chose Lonzo over D'Lo, like clear mistake. And they were like, and he was like, well, you know, the locker room couldn't trust D'Lo, so you had to get rid of D'Lo. And I'm just like, I don't agree with that take. I was like, because if D'Lo was the best player on that roster regardless, or at least had the most potential of anyone in that roster, you don't move a guy because you're worried about other guys in the locker room trusting him. You'll get rid of Robert Sacker, whatever his name, Nick Young. Sacker, yeah, Nick Young. You'll get rid of Wesley Johnson, all those guys, if it really was about trust.
And it seems like D'Lo still has a pretty good relationship with the guys like that were in that locker room, Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram. And, you know, there's been a ton of talk about him really growing up in Brooklyn. Maybe that couldn't have happened in LA, but he's been excellent. Kenny's talked highly of him, saying he's very coachable, no problems with him. Teammates love him. Like, his teammates haven't said anything bad about him all year. Obviously, the change of scenery, like I said, had an impact, but I couldn't see him being a locker room problem for the Nets at all.
Yeah. And people also with the phone thing, like people make mistakes. Like my friend had a girlfriend and he like would say he was going to bed and not go to bed. And one night I posted a Snapchat and he was in it and he got like a lot of shit because she was like, I thought you were sleeping. Why are you with Kory? But like, you know, it's shit like that happens. And obviously, like you said, like it's not,
and
it's
if
not
you
the end of the world.
Deeper into the story, it's not as bad as the media made it seem. They made it seem like D'Angelo posted the video. He shared the video with somebody else and they posted it.
Right,
But
exactly.
I'm not going to dive into that because really I could care less. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, Nick Young cheated on Iggy Azalea, and that's like
scumbag.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like he was doing something righteous. So not really much else to say. Any of the other words you want to touch on before we'll give our locks later in the season, but right now, any races heating up?
I made this take on Full X's Hoops last night. I'm leaning toward co-MVPs right now for MVP again.
I don't mind it.
I don't think there's, and like I hate when people, like I've had some conversations about MVP and people try and like discredit the other guy. You cannot discredit either one of these guys. I don't care that James Harden's averaging 36 points per game. It doesn't mean he's been more impactful or more effective than Antetokounmpo, who's doing it in way less minutes. And obviously the success, you can measure that either way. The Rockets going from 14th to third, almost the second. The Bucks have held the 1 seed for the entire season, more or less. I think they were the 2 seed maybe for like 3 weeks. I just don't think you can discredit either guy. I'm not going to be angry if Harden wins it. I'm not going to be angry if Antetokounmpo wins it. I just think it's one of those years where I honestly can say there is no wrong answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind either way. I think, if you're trying to say negatives about each guy, James Harden defensively isn't amazing, and Giannis is better in that area. And then if you're making an argument against Giannis, it's, his team is a lot better than Houston's, and that hasn't dealt with as many injuries throughout the season. So either way, I'm cool with whoever wins. Both guys are deserving to win MVP. It's not like a situation where someone's going to win that doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, and still, like the per 36 numbers for Antetokounmpo, he'd be averaging, if he was playing just about the Harden minutes, he'd be averaging 13 and a half rebounds, 30 points, and 6.5 assists with a block and a half a game and a steal and a half a game, which, those are fantastic numbers. Instead, he plays 33.
Reminds you of when Steph won and he wasn't really playing in the fourth quarter because the Warriors were up like 20 every game. So it was like, yeah, it's Steph. I think, James Harden didn't win that year either. So it could end up being the same thing for him. But Kory, anything else before we get out of here?
I think that wraps it up.
All right, guys, as always, appreciate you watching, listening, whatever it is, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and YouTube.
Peace out.